Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. This is Firoz Manji from Daraja Press. Welcome to the show today. Today we're going to be meeting with comrades from the social justice movements in Kenya. And in particular, we'll be talking with Sam Gathanga Dogo and Gashepa Gashihi, Warimu Gathimba, and Faith Kasina. And we'll be discussing the book that we published recently and which was launched in Nairobi last week, Mathare, an urban bastion of anti-oppression struggle in Kenya. So welcome to our guests, Gathanga, Wairimu, Gasheke, and Faith. Welcome to you all. Perhaps we can start with just quickly, if each of you could just introduce yourselves to the audience. Shall we start with Faith?
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. I am Faith Kasina. I come from an organization called KFLA Community Justice Center and the Social Justice Centers movement at large. Thank you.
Gasheke.
Hi, comrades. My name is Gashehe. I'm a coordinator of Mathare Social Justice Center, and I also a member of the Social Justice Center working group, and I'm a member also of Organic Intellectual Network, which was a part of the team that published Gathanga's book.
Okay. Wairimu.
Hi everyone, my name is Wairimu and I am a member of Mathare Social Justice Center and Organic Intellectual Network.
Welcome. An Afro-feminist you describe yourself as.
Yeah.
Great. And then Gathanga.
Hello everyone, I'm Gathanga Nmo. I'm from Baraka Social Justice Center and part of the Organic Intellectual Network in Nairobi, Kenya. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for those introductions. Gathanga, you're the primary author. There's a chapter there which was written together with Faith Kasina of this really interesting and I think an important book from my perspective. So perhaps we can start by you helping us understand why you decided to bring this book together and to give us an outline for people who may not yet have read it. What does it actually tell the story of? Give us a brief overview of it.
Thank you, Firoz. Thank you for the opportunity. The book, Mathare, an urban bastion of anti-oppression struggle in Kenya, is a book that tries to recreate and rewrite the history of Mathare that is unknown to many, that has been obliterated from our history books, a history that even the locals and the residents of Mathare, some of them are not aware of the rich history that Mathare has. Mathare has been looked down upon by the outside community and also our citizen.
For people who are not familiar with Nairobi,
yeah,
what is Mathare? I mean, you know, when I was young, Mathare was the name of the mental hospital.
Yeah. So okay, Mathare, this is the second largest slum in Kenya, and also it hosts the only public psychiatric hospital in Kenya. And so Mathare has been associated with the Mathare Mental Hospital, which is the only national psychiatric hospital in Kenya. So whenever you mention the name Mathare to any other citizen of our country, what comes to their mind is the hospital. And for a long time, most people thought that maybe Mathare, now the slum, hosts people who are mentally unstable, but that's not the truth. And it's the story that I've been trying to rewrite and to give a new perspective of what Mathare is to me, because this is where I grew, and this the place that has nurtured me from my childhood up to this point. And so I felt somehow compelled to rewrite that history of Mathare and its history in the struggle for social justice in Kenya. That was my compelling factor.
So, so why is it that you claim that Mathare has been the center of anti-oppression struggles dating back from the colonial times? Is that right?
Yeah,
So
that's very, very correct.
why is that the case?
If you start checking at the history of Mathare, also from the colonial time, from the colonial struggle, when the British came to our country, you'll find that Mathare was one of the regions that hosted most of the ex-soldiers from World War One, World War Two, and they used to organize in Mathare. When they came back to Mathare because most of them were made landless by the white settlers. So they came back to Mathare, and that's where they started organizing. If you look at the history of people like Pio Gamapinto, who was buried in City Park next to Mathare Slum, you find that people are organizing in Mathare. And that's why there's a road called Mau Mau Road. Mau Mau is the Kenya Freedom and Land Army that fought for our first liberation struggle against the colonial government. That road has been was renamed to Mau Mau Road because of the role that Mathare played in all this struggle, also from around 1950s when there were Operation Anvil and Operation Job Scott. So that Mathare has been organizing all this time from the colonial government. They were organizing against the colonial government, organizing the citizens, the residents, the ex-soldiers, organizing against the injustice that they found in the city. Because this is the time we find that in our urban areas, also in Nairobi, the government introduced the Kipande system. They were using the IDs that to show that they were only visitors in the city, and so they were required to only stay for a certain period of time, and then they'll be taken back to their reserves. But then our African, the Kenyan people saw that this was like a systematic way of discriminating us on our own land, and that's why they started residing in these places to continue and organizing slowly by slowly. So next to Mathare, on the western side of Mathare is Muthaiga. Muthaiga is I'll say an affluent area, and this is where most of the settlers lived when they came to the urban center. And I chose my history back to the area in Muthaiga and those because that from our history, from my maternal, my family came from those sites, and their land was taken by the white settlers, and that's why we had to be pushed to Mathare. And this has happened to our families too. So you find that during this time, our families, most of the families from Mathare were living in Mathare, but then their parents were working in Muthaiga. And this is where you find that Kenyans could go to those places. They could smuggle goods, also like things like guns, bullets, and come with them to Mathare, then organize, and then those weapons will be dispatched to the Aberdare Forest and Mount Kenya. So this is where the organizing of the people of Mathare started. In 1952, most of the 1950s, the government learned of the plans that were going in Mathare, organizing against the government, radicalizing the citizens the residents that were living in Mathare. And so the houses were raised by the colonial government because they felt threatened by this organizing that was happening. And they felt that now this was a threat to their rule in Kenya, and they had to do something. And they responded by raising down the shacks that had been built by Africans. And these were now the colonial struggle. I think it was given an impetus, I could say, by raising down. Now, I think Africans realized, Kenyans in specific realized that now what they were doing was somewhat impactful. And you find they continue organizing even after the house got trade. They never gave up. They never went back to the reserves. No, they decided to stay and continue organizing until we got independence. That's what happened. This continued even after the second. Now our first, our own government, the first Kenyatta regime came in power. We continue. The people of Mathare continue organizing, according to the Moi regime, Kibaki, and even the last regime that head of Uhuru Kenyatta. That's how Mathare has been organizing all this time. But then the problem is that this history has been obliterated from books. Our history is very much documented in Kenya. We find that the history that our kids are reading is not the true history of our country. And this is something that has been compelling me from time to try and come up with the right history so that the generation to come may know where we came from, where we are, and where we are headed as a country.
Right, that's really interesting. And am I right in saying that you were born in Mathare?
Okay, I was born. Hello.
Go on.
Okay, I was not really born in Mathare. I was born in the western part of the country. That's eroded. That's like the western, the Rift Valley. But then I came back to Mathare in 1989. That's where I found myself. So all this time, like for more than 20 years, I've grown up in Mathare. Mathare has been my home since 1999. But if you look at the history of my family, most of the maternal side, my mother was born in Mathare, and my grandmother, you find that we've been all along living in Mathare, apart from my great grandmother who were evicted from City Park and came back now to Mathare.
Okay. Now, the book contains a very interesting chapter, which Faith Kasina was involved in. And you focus there on the brutality and violence of Mathare and the police and the appalling activities of the police. I love the phrase you say, it's not a Kenya police service, but it's a Kenya police force, which I think is an important distinction you have made. So Faith, tell us more about your chapter and why it was important for this to be included.
I think just from what Gadanga has said, coming from the slums, we faced a lot of police presence in our ghettos, because people call them ghettos, but they are our homes. But yeah, in those ghettos and slums, we faced a lot of police presence. And as we were growing up, there was a lot of criminalization. There still is. One of the reasons why I joined the social justice centers movement was because of criminalization of young people from my community and the extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearance. So there have been these talks about reforms at the police, reforming the police from police force to police service. Yes, but then as time goes by, we've seen only the uniform changed from navy blue to blue. Nothing really changed. There was a conversation that the police come live in the community where people live, but also we've seen the gap widen between the community and the police because of waking up every day and witnessing our young people being killed, and nothing really happens to those killer cops. We wake up in the morning, the killer cops that we know very well, like Mathare, Rashid is well known, in Kayole, Ngari is well known, and other killer cops. Like we wake up, they kill young people, we document these cases, they are taken by IPOA, which is Independent Policing Oversight Authority. They're taken by IAU, International Affairs Unit, but we don't see much come out of it. Like we don't witness these killer cops being arrested. So the reason why we came up to write about the unreformable police force is because we've tried these reforms and reforms are not working. But it's been a battle since the times of 1982 when 1986 when Moi was during the Moi's regime, when he arrested people and mothers of victims, mothers of political prisoners camped at Uhuru Park to advocate that their sons be released. So we also linked that with the struggle that you're experiencing right now, that even right now, it's Mothers of Victims and Survivors Network that have come out to call out the police, the killer cops, and actually hold the government accountable and ask that these killer cops are held accountable and that their sons are given justice, you know. So the reason why we wrote this with Gadanga was we wanted to show the history that has been there in the police force, not service, because it's not a service anymore. It's not a service at all. It has never given service to the people. If anything, the police has been there to serve the interests of the state and not the interests of the people. We've also linked with it with the issues that during elections, we've seen a police being deployed in the areas that are termed as violent, simply because they are not on the side of the ruling class. You know, if you're seen as the opposition, a lot of police are deployed in your area. Mathare being one of the areas that has experienced a lot of police presence during elections. And we've witnessed a lot of police violence and police brutality during after elections. So for us, the question was, who does the police serve? And are these reforms really working, or are there even reforms in the first place? And if there are reforms, will they even work for the people? Because I don't think the service, the force works for the people at all. It's there to protect the interests of the state and the rich.
But one of the striking things that comes across both in your chapter and in the book as a whole is to point out the leading role of women in the struggles that have taken place in Mathare and indeed elsewhere. And why do you think that is the case?
You know, women, these are their children. So for them, this struggle is so personal, because when they wake up, they're losing their children. And even if it's a wife, she has lost a husband. So this struggle is personal to the women for losing their children and not getting justice at all. And even when their children are killed, the friends of those children police go ahead and kill the friends of those children. So to them is the fact that they're losing a generation that they will never see, and the fact that even your son was a friend of someone else will also get killed without the police even caring whether they were innocent or not. So I think the struggle is so personal to the women, but their role has not been brought out perfectly in the history, and that's why to us we thought that it's important that we tell the history of women in the struggle. They have been there fighting, and because this struggle has been so personal to them, you see, they camped at Uhuru Park until their sons were released. Like, they even went on hunger strike, you know. And right now, mothers go on demonstrations and do petitions to parliament, asking that that police killings come to an end and that justice be served to their sons.
So, I mean, it's a really important point that you're making, because one of the limits of the way in which the story of the Mau Mau, the Land and Freedom Army, has been told has not been to emphasize the role that women played in that struggle. And secondly, what's linked to that is that the liberation movement is projected in most literature as being a rural and so-called Kikuyu realm. So, I mean, I'd really like to congratulate you for having pointed out both the importance of the role of women and the fact that it was in the urban centers as well that the struggle for for freedom began and continues to be so. Wairimu, you very kindly did the first review of this book. Tell us your impressions. What struck you about this particular book?
I think my favorite thing about this book is its depiction of Mathare. A lot of people talk about Mathare either in terms of its proximity to the mental facility or its housing the urban here. Like most narratives that come out of that place are pitiful, yeah, just sad narratives. So I like how Gafanga spanned his story to be one from this proud insider perspective. And as, as you said earlier, like a lot of history in this country is largely filtered. And there's an ideological vacuum in this country that shows even in the way our history is taught. I have a friend who argues that Kenya is a very successful piece of colonization, honestly. We've lost touch with our history, and in today's age, we have people who don't know their mother tongues and all that. And yeah, so I think this book is important in that it manages to give us this never had before kind of Mathare story. It manages to capture its legacy of resistance from the first liberation in the fight for independence, the second fight for liberation during Moi's presidency, and currently with the social justice working movement.
You describe yourself as an Afrofeminist. So what's the Afrofeminist perspective on the struggles that have taken place in Mathare, and how is this book contributed to that understanding?
I like the fact that Gafanga and Kasina took us through the role of women in Mathare's resistance, and I like how Faith has told us, has emphasized the struggle being very personal for women, because Mathare is a relatively matriarchal place. We have a lot of single women, and these single women are often losing their sons. So yeah, it was really important for me as a Afrofeminist to feel that representation of women. Because as you said yourself, even with the Mau story itself, we don't have a lot of women representation. We don't get to hear about the role of women. And most of what we hear that women play these largely supportive roles. We don't get to hear the role of the women who are the active participants in the struggle. Yeah, so that was really important.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that, Wairimu. One last question to you. You've been very positive about the way you reviewed this book, but what are the things that you think ought to have been covered but were not, or not adequately?
Okay, the book was quite short, but I found it packed with details, but maybe that stems from my own ignorance. As I said earlier, we have this sort of vacuum in the way our history is taught. So I didn't really know much about Mathare to start with. So I think this is a good book for anyone like me, a beginner who's trying to get into the stories of the various informal settlements in the country. But I'd have loved to hear more about Gavanga's thoughts on how neoliberal urban planning has shaped up Mathare the way it is today. I didn't get to feel much about that from the book. Yeah, I would have loved to hear that.
So, do we expect you to write the next one, the story that of the struggle of women in Kenya?
Yeah, but I would like to focus on the role of rural women because personally I grew up in Nyeri. Yeah, I would love to focus on the rural women, especially now that Kenya is rapidly urbanizing. Where does that leave them? Where does that leave the small farmers who is running their farms as these women get older? Yeah, that's a story I don't write about.
Right. Oh well, that's interesting. I mean, Nyeri was a very important center, and And I have a personal connection since my father was born there. Anyway, what gave rise to this book was also the I think the important role that and as often happens with Gasheke, in the background without taking credit for his role in it. Gasheke, tell us more about what made you help stimulate the development of this book and the role that it plays for the social justice centers in Kenya.
Thank you very much, Comrade Feroz, and it's very inspiring to have Gadanga, Wairimo, and Faith, who are on their own right key leaders now shaping up the social justice movement. And as you know, what sparked this book is because Gadanga has been part of the Ruaraka Social Justice Center, and being a graduate from a university, he was always questioning why there is no more history about the struggle of Mathare. And after reading a few books and also reading the literature and articles that you are writing with and a dialogue we had, he said that it was important as our generation to start documenting our history. So after formation of the organic intellectual networks, Gadanga was concerned that our generation was not writing our history. We were just reading about the books of Maina Kenyati and many history written during Mau Mau. And there was nothing written about the role of the urban struggle of places like Mathare. And his history, being grown up in Mathare, and there was always that narrative that Mathare was dispossessed people, hopeless, and they were victims. And he said that when he read some history about Pio Gama Pinto, and it's that book of Pinto that sparked this heavy conversation after knowing that Pinto used to supply Mau Mau freedom fighters with the ammunition and tools for and writing petition and memorandum against the oppression of the peasant in Kenya. So he said, how comes many people don't know about the role of Mau Mau, the role of Pinto, the role of Mau Mau Road in Mathare? And that's what sparked this conversation after him writing few reflections. Then as you know, Feroz, you inspired me in writing. I remember I can tell these young people, I used to write very few paragraphs. Then you said, this is very important, continue writing. With Pambazuka, they should know that you had a publication called Pambazuka, where some of us cut our teeth in writing. And that was very powerful. And that's when I started sharing some of his articles with you, and we encouraged him to write. But the spark is that in the last 30 years, where we have been facing the liberal democratic diet, little has been written about social movement and the role of the ordinary people in the struggle for liberation. Even the role of the Mathare in multi-party democracy, the role of Mathare in building up in the new constitution. Very little have been written, and that was the concern. And not only Gadanga that is concerned with that, but many other young people also are concerned with that. That we have not written about the history of our struggle in the last 30 years.
You made mention of the organic intellectual network. Can you say a little bit more about that? I don't think many people in our audience necessarily know about who those are. We've lost Gasheke. Well, maybe I can ask Gathanga to say a little bit, who are the organic intellectuals and why are they called organic intellectuals?
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I think I'll talk a little bit, and then Werimo will also help on some aspect. Maybe you will forget. So, okay, Mathare being the second slum, okay, there's been this issue about story about slum tourism, people coming to study Mathare for their academic studies, they do their researches, and then they go back to their places. So we always thought that it was good that if we could nurture writers or intellectuals from the community, people who have been in our communities, people who have experientially known our slums and the struggles we've been going through. And that's why we call them organic, because they've experientially been through the various challenges of Mathare, such as access to water, the challenges of access to health, the environmental and ecological injustices, the extrajudicial killing. That's why we thought that coming up with people who truly know and who have experientially lived this life will try and at least give a clear and a vivid picture of how their struggles have been. And that's why we call them organic, because they've been living with us and they still experience these challenges day by day. So it's not something like they're not writing from the academic angle that we know. So we write from our experiences. That's why we are called organic intellectuals.
Okay, Wadimu, organic. Are you an organic intellectual?
Yeah, I consider myself one.
So
but the way I see it, I see this network filling in this vacuum we have, documenting stories that we otherwise never hear, like the stories of Mathare, reflections on books that were written long ago, revisiting some of these topics and seeing what has changed. And because the network consists of people working at the community level, I feel like we get to hear more authentic stories from the network compared to, as Gafanga was saying, someone will just come visit Mathare for maybe their PhD dissertation, fly back to wherever they came from. So yeah.
okay, and Faith, you're part of the organic intellectual network.
Yes.
So tell us why.
I think just for the fact that it gives platforms to people who are not like writers, renowned writers, to tell their stories as authentically as they can in whatever language they feel best. That is a powerful thing, because then it's only in our language that we understand and we can tell our stories. So when you get such a place where you can tell your story as powerful as you want and in whatever language you feel fit, and people are able to embrace it, it's a powerful thing, because then you don't have to like fit in a certain bracket for you to be told you're a writer. That's embracing our talent and who we are and dignifying the ghetto talent and writers.
Right. But the book that we put together was written in English. Might we see some books appearing in Sheng as well?
We might see books in Swahili. Sheng is kind of very tricky because the Sheng keeps changing all the time. And when you come to Kayole, we will not understand our Sheng. It's only the people of Kayole that can read the Sheng in Kayole, and Mathare people cannot read our Sheng. But we are trying to tell our stories in a simple language, and maybe we can even translate Gadanga's book in Swahili, the language that the people of Mathare can understand better. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the point you make that it's a growing, it's constantly changing. That's what language should be. That's what language does. When it gets fossilized by academics to say this is the Queen's Swahili, then actually it restricts and then creates a division between those who speak and those who are supposedly the thinkers. And I think you should not lose sight of the movement and motion of language and the appropriation of and the creation of something new. And I think that's something to celebrate. We can always put a parallel translation if necessary, but I think we should experiment with things like that. And maybe a small audio book might be a way of making that happen. Some comments from you guys on that perspective.
Okay, can I go first?
Please.
Okay, after the launch, we were thinking with Comrade Gasheke, if you can translate the book into Kiswahili, I think it will be a good thing, more so for our residents or for those, for the part of the population that maybe they don't understand, for those who don't understand English. We thought that it would be better if we did it in Swahili first and then maybe start distributing the book maybe in the local primary and secondary schools, and also even to the community members there. We also have groups in Mathare, youth groups and maybe women self-help groups. So I think this will be a good idea if we can translate in Swahili first. And then maybe now we can now start thinking on if we can translate it into Sheng and Sheng. I think maybe, it will help to spread the message. Yeah, we can look on that direction too with time.
Warimu, how's your Sheng?
Hello?
In here we just speak Kikuyu, so I'm a bit rusty. Yeah, but I hope we get to document our stories in languages that are accessible to all.
Right. Gasheke.
Thank you very much. I think, as Comrade Feroza said, language is a very important and is also a tool for liberation. As Yusuf Hassan, who was in the book launch, also spoke very strongly about Ngugi wa Thiong'o and the role of language in liberation struggle. So I think the idea of also translating the book of Gadanga in Sheng will be very important. I agree with the Faith Kasina because they are Sheng because they are more radical. It's different from people of Mathare. Maybe Mathare they need to learn more from Kayole because it's the heart of the women resistance at the moment, I think. So, but if just imagine, Faith, we have this book in Sheng. Even if it's not the whole translation, but we have some small booklet in Sheng that speak about the resistance of the people, because there's a lot of struggle and marginalized struggle that we may not see, but the young people are facing now, especially below 20 years to below 14. And they are not able to transmit this struggle in their language to the mainstream. I think it's a great idea that we can think about. There is a Gadanga, as he spoke, there is a new Sheng that is in the streets, but me, I can't speak it. But you, because you're a bit younger than me, you can speak it, like Nakulomboto, but I don't know about that kind of language. So, and I know Faith is smiling because this language is there. What if we have Faith Kasina as one of the first women to organize a social justice center, writing a book in Sheng? It will be very powerful. What inspired you? And I think Gadanga has sparked a very powerful conversation. But if it is codified in the English Victoria language, how many people will read it? I think we need to think about that. And I'm happy that Comrade Yusuf Hassan was inspired to help this kind of small booklets to translate them in different languages, especially starting with Swahili. But let's think about Sheng. What if we have books written in that language, but also have the same subculture of Kayole people? Just imagine how many young people we can mobilize who are being a victim of extrajudicial killing, being destroyed by crime and drugs. We need these young people as a social force in movement building. What cut us from them is lack of connecting language. There was a proposal there, and I hope the Raja Press also will partner in this, that Gadanga needed to take his book to the local primary school in Mathare, because many people felt it was very powerful and have a powerful history about Mathare that many people don't know. And the young people are proposing, how is Gadanga move on in a local primary school and secondary school, giving his book as a gift and sharing about his history from Mathare and learning from the informal school, and now he's a graduate and writing about the history of Mathare. So I think Comrade Feroz is a very powerful idea about language, and Ngugi wa Thiong'o has spoken about it for a long, long time, that we need to decolonize ourselves Swahili is powerful. As Faith say, let's try doing the first with Swahili. But I would be would be happy to see Gadanga book in Kayole Sheng version.
So, Faith, Kayole Sheng, are you up to it? Faith? Can you hear us, Faith?
Hey, yes, now I can hear you. Sorry, my network was a little bit shaky. But yes, whatever Gasheke has said about language is very powerful because, again, I think if you want, when you're taking the book to the people in the community, we need to translate it in the language that they can understand. And the fact that most people in that room, when we were launching that book, said they were not proud of Mathare at all, the place where they come from, is actually, if this book can actually be translated in a language that they can understand and read it and understand it, then they would understand that Mathare is a place of hope, a place where struggle has started, and they would start being proud of it. So for me, is yes, we should translate it in a language that people understand, and we can take the challenge and translate it in our very complicated Sheng, because the Kayole one is very complicated. But yeah, that would be very beautiful. That young people would start embracing and appreciating the places where they come from, instead of us thinking as them as mere ghettos, as mere slums, as mere informal settlements, but being proud of them as our homes and places that we've grown up in. Yes, so that would be very, very beautiful. And it would be also an avenue of us to mobilize young people to join the movement.
Okay, so last words, Warimu.
Oh, I hope everyone gets to read this book, and I hope you guys at Daraja help Kathanga distribute the book to these primary and secondary schools. It's very important, and I have literally not seen any other documentation of Mathare that's so thorough and detailed. Yeah.
Kathanga?
Thank you. I think we need to retell our story as Mathare. We need to take this story as far as possible because growing up, Mathare was a source of shame for me. When I went to my high school first, I couldn't say I came from Mathare because I was ashamed of the place that I grew up in because it was a slum, all this, fighting all these inequalities and injustice. But now Mathare has a new definition for me, and it's a story of community resilience and community resistance, and that has stood out for me, and that will be now my new definition for the people of Mathare. And then just, please, I can touch on the story of that we authored with Beth Casina as I finished. It was on the police reform and the unreformable police force, because we felt that Mathare is surrounded by a lot of police stations, and these police stations are not there to give us security, but they've been there to oppress us and to always intimidate us into submission. But we need to change that narrative, and it's the people of Mathare who can do that, and that's why we have to fight the system and maybe change the status quo. And there's one thing, there have been few things that have been happening with now the current regime led by Ruto. I think today the IPOA was summoned by the president himself, and he wants to know their mandate and role in keeping the police in check. And I think these are, I think it's a good signal from the president. And also, just like a week ago, we saw that the special service unit, which was involved in a lot of extrajudicial killing, was disbanded, which I think it's a good direction as we go on converting our police force into a police service. Thank you.
All right, good. Well, I think end with a couple of comments. I think this book is really important because it has enabled people to be proud of Mathare, of the informal settlements that where most of our people live. And you do so not by romanticizing a place, but celebrating the struggle. And I think that's what defines people. not their identity, but their capacity to fight for freedom. And it's that reason that we are really proud at Daraja to be able to publish books such as these that gives real voice to real people and that celebrates and the struggles that we've taken place. Not just victories, but the defeats, because we learn from defeats too. And so I want to congratulate all of you and the Organic Intellectuals Network for what you're doing. And I'm really proud. And if any way that Daraja can be of help, you have only to get in touch. So I send you warm greetings of solidarity and thank you for joining us on this show today. I'll just put up the picture of the front cover of the book and end by saying thank you, asante sana, asanteni, and we will be in touch again soon.
Thank you very much.
Asante sana. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Faith, and keep in touch, Faith. On Wairimo.
Yes, Gasheke. Yes, Gasheke.
Bye-bye.
Okay. This is music from Amira Kier called Mystic, from the album called Mystic Dance. Samiri, Kindred Spirit. Thank you for joining us on the Latin Podcast. We will be again in touch